Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to pick up from Daf Kuf Samach Hey Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Yetz Hashem, we're going to try to get all the way till the end of Kuf Ayin Beis Amud Beis. The Mishnah on the bottom says as follows: Kasav boy, a person writes in a star, Zuzin Meya, 100 zuz, the Inon Sloin Esrin, that has a value of what? Which is 20 slime. Now 20 slime, every seller has 4 zuz. So it's really 80 zuz. So the halach is, what do you do in such a case where you have a star that says 100 zuz or 80 zuz? Ein loy, elo, esrin, zuzin. The halach is he only gets 80 zuz. Other way around is, what happens? You have a star that says, Meya de inon, zuzin meya de inon tlasin sloin, ein loy lamana. Same thing the other way around, where it says that it's 100 zuz, but it says 30 slime. 30 slime is at 120 zuz. The halach is, ein loy elamana. Now, what happens if it says kesev zuzin deinon? It just says that we're going to give silver zuzin, and then it stops. You have like period, dot, then nimchak, and it's erased. You don't see. The halach is ein pachas mishtayim. Since it's plural, you have to have at least 2. Kesev slain. You have a star that says you have a kesev slain, silver slain deinon. Also then nimchak, and also got erased. You have like dot. Ein pachas mishtayim. Whenever it's plural, you have to get 2. Darkoinos, now Darkoinos, the Rashbam said, just like by Sefer Ezra, which means gold, the Inon, which are, dot, it doesn't say, V'nimchak, again, ein pachis mishtayim. Now, Kosev Bible Lamala, Mana, Ulamata Masayim, what happens if there's a discrepancy? On the top it says 100, on the bottom it says 200, etc. Or the other way around, Milamala Masayim, Ulamata Mana. The halach is, Hakol Hoylech Achar Atachton. We always go on the bottom line. However, the Rashbam says, which was last week's shiur. We can now learn from the last line. However, it means the bottom. So what's the purpose of writing the top? You're able to learn Yelamed Minali. Ad Kana Mishnah. Zoktigmar Taner Abana. Amar Kesef. The halach is, he says, silver. Ein pachas mediner kesef. You don't get less than a silver dinner. Kesef or dinrin, or if it dinrin kesef, it says dinrin or silver. Ein pachas mishnei dinrin kesef. The minimum you're going to get is 2 silver dinners. Kesef bidinrin. Ein pachas mishnei dinrin dahav kesef. However, when it says silver and dinners, then you don't get from 2 dinners of gold worth of silver. Amamar kesef ein pachas medina kesef. If it says silver, you don't get less than a dinner of kesef. The aim of Frektimar, why are we saying it's a dinner of aim and naska? Maybe it just means a bar. Naska der baba, maybe just a little bar. Mechatesi say such a shiur, Amalaza, the kasib matbeya. Since it says the lashon matbeya means a coin, therefore we're not going to say it's a bar. The aim of priti, let's say it's prutas. Amar papa ba'asa de lisagi priti de kaspa. They never have silver prutas. Tana Rabbana, we're going to bring a very similar brisa that talks about who are then by gold. We're going to find out the same halach as dahav. If it's gold, ain't pachas medina dahav. Or if it says dahav, dinrin. Or if it dinrin dahav, it's the exact same. Halachas over here, it's gold. Earlier was kesef. Ain't pachas mishnei dinrin dahav. Now, what happens if it says in the star dahav bid dinrin? Then the halach is ain't pachas mishnei dinrin kesef dahav. You don't get less than 2 silver dinners worth of gold. Amamar. So we just said same kashas we had earlier in the earlier brisa. Dahav. Ain't pachas medina dahav. Frektimar ve'im and aska. Say it's a bar. Why do you have to say it's a dinner? Rabbi Lazar, the kasamat beya, since it says the term coin, we're not going to say it's a bar. One kuf samach vava marala ve'ema priti. Again, say maybe we're talking about prutos. Our answer is priti the dahava le'avdi inchi. In those days, they didn't make prutas. Zahav b'dinrin. We said earlier that you have zav b'dinrin. Ain't pachas, you don't get less than mishnei dinrin kesef dahav. You don't get less than 2 dinners kesef worth of gold. Fraktig mara, why do we have to say this? Ve'ema dahava pricha betray dinner dahava kamar. Maybe just means the fragments, pieces. Mechatesi to say it is gold. Amar ba, you know why? Yad ba'al ashtar la tachtaina. Since it's always he has the worst. It's his more mitama mitzim chaver levaraya. We always say yad ba'al ashtar is al tachtoina. Frektimar, is that really true? Ihachi ve'ema reisha. Take out they bring them from the guys. Calls in nimcha from their shop. We have a problem with the Reisha. The first two cases in the Reisha, where we clearly have earlier in such cases where it says, Kesef be dinrit. Over there you're telling me in the Reisha where it says very clearly that says Kesef dinrin or dinrin Kesef, the halacha is you get 2 gold dinners, which are worth in silver. And the other case is where it says dahav dinner. In such a case we said ein pachos mishnei dinner dahav. So for Gemara, in those two cases, what's going on? Why don't over there you say yad val shtar tachtoina? Maybe it's silver, or maybe over there also means fragments. Amar Rav Ashi, you know why? There's a chilik. The ratio we're going to say it says dinri, and Sefer says dinarin. The hainu, whenever there's a chilik between ratio and the dinri to dinarin, is that it's more common to use the term dinri. Now, it's more common to use the word dinarin. Now, when that's common, usually what that means is silver dinarin. So if you want to go not the common way of talking, you go explicitly and you say dinri, which dinri means zahav. So Zok Demar, where do we have such a concept? And now Timur the Shani ben dinri le dinrin. Where do we see a maisa? We're going to bring a maisa where we saw there's a chilik between gold and silver, between the lashonis the dinri and the Tanya Isha shahayu aleh safek chamesh leidos or safek chametz zivos. Now the halacha is she had a miscarriage. You're not sure if it was taka, a fetus, or not. So the halacha is you have to bring mitama safek ruach, safek vlad, the Rashbam says. So in such a case, you have to bring a carbon, mitam safek, or safek chametz zivos, which you learned in Daf Yomi, the chilukim, dafka by the yudalf meziva, a zavak daila. You're not sure when you saw it. Also, those halachas where it's a suffix, the halachas you have to bring a carbon. How many carbonis you bring? The Gemara says, Mevia carbon echad, you bring 1 carbon, vaycheles bizvachim. Once you bring your first carbon, it's not a problem. Now you're mutter to eat kachim. The ein hashar aleh chayvu, which means the other 4 chiyuv carbonis, you're not mechuyev because it's only a suffix. It's good enough to be mekel. Hay aleh chamish lidas vadayis. However, if it's a vaday or chamish zivas vadayis, then the halach is mevia carbon echad. Once you do your first carbon, vaycheles bizvachim, you're able to eat zvachim. Hashar aleh chayvu. However, you still have to bring the other 4 carbonis. And ma'asev amdu kinim b'Yerushalayim b'din rezav. What happened was there was such a high market for the birds. That's what you had to bring for a carbon, especially Ani had to bring 2 birds. So in such a case, the pairs of birds went so expensive it was worth a dinar zahav. Now dinar zahav is how much? It's worth 25 silver dinars. That's how much we're talking about. So what happened was, Amar Shimon Gamliel, he was very upset about the pricing. He said, he made a shvu and he says, I'm not going to go to sleep until when? Until we lower the prices. Ad shayu b'dinrin. Until it means b'dinrin. What's dinrin? We're going to see. This is what we're trying to bring a riot to the chiluk between dinrin and dinrin. Dinrin over here is going to mean silver. So nichnas lebezdin. He got up to bezdin v'lama and he said as follows: Elimida isha shayalech chamesh lidois v'dois or chamesh zivois v'dois. The halach is maybe carbon echa v'chelos v'zvachim. She could eat the karbanis. However, here's the punchline that he did. He said ve'ein hashar aleh chayva. So the second he stated that there's no chiyuv to bring out the karbanis, by default the price immediately drops. And the Gemara says, "Va'amdu on kuf samach vavam and beis va'amdu kinim bay bayayim." On that day, as soon as he gave his psak birasayim, which is a quarter of a silver dinner, so we're talking about a quarter of a silver dinner, went from 25 silver dinners to a quarter. So it's mamish 1% of the value that it was. Zok the Gemara, we said earlier, Kosov milamala, the Mishnah Firdais, and it says that Kosov milamala, mana, etc., or lamata masayim, or opposite, we always go based on the lamata as long as not shita achreina. So why do you write lamala? That if it gets something that's erased, you could go after and learn up from the top. So Tana Rabbana, Yilamed hatachta min ha'alyon ba'is achas. You can only learn 1 letter of a loibish de'yaisis. Kegoy, chanan mechanani, or va'anan manani. All you're doing is adding 1 letter. So for more, why? Ma'ishnosh de'yaisis delay. You're going to tell me delay misrami shein. Ben arba isis, v'havle pagal shma. You're worried you're going to have a name which is for isis. Let's say you're going to have 4 letters, and you're going to take 2 letters, it's going to be half. Yihachi is achas nami. When you have a name, it's only 2 letters. Delma, let's say dun or god, which is only 2 letters. Delma misrami shein ben shein ben shtei isis. Let's say gimel dalet is god, and you only have the gimel, you can add a dalet. V'havle pagal shma. Elish shtei isis. You know why? Hainu taima delma misrami shein ben sholish isis. Let's say you have a name Levi. Levi is 3 isis. All you have is the lamed. By you to put the vav and the yud is roiv, and there's bam is masbet. The kula hai vadai lo yofino. And it doesn't make sense to say that the cipher law, that he made such a long mistake, and therefore we're only going to say up to one letter. Amar Rav Papa. Pshitali, if it says on top of the shtar, seifel. Now seifel means a cup or a bucket, milamata. Now the kefil, the Rashbam says, is a talis, milamata. So you have all the difference between a samach and a kuf is the letter, is that leg. So akol oilech achar tachtan. So either we learn that kefil is not a shayla. We have no tzad to say that it just for whatever reason turned into from a samach to a kuf. Boyer papa. However, we have a shayla as follows: kefil milamala, v'seifel milamata mai. However, when you have the kuf on top, it's very possible the samach on the bottom was really a kuf. So what happened? How did it change from a samach from a kuf to a samach? Maybe a fly went on the kuf and picked it up all the way, a little up, and erased the leg of the kuf and made it more of a samach. So we chayshish for that or not? And that the Gemara ends up with saying teku. We blame with teku, and the Rashbam says ha'moitzi mechaveiroi olav harayo. And he goes into that it's not a similar case of mamna multiple suffix. There we're not sure what happened. Here we do know. However, we just don't know what is the halach. Zok the Gemara weiter on the bottom kuf samach vavam mebei Yehuda have it kosev bei shismei of zuzah. Now it says 600 in a zuz. The Gemara is going to give a few options: 600 ister on a zuz, 600 zuz in a zuz, or 600 prutas in a zuz. So Shachar of Sheravya Kamei Dabaya. Do we say shish me'ah isteri v'zuzah? Now isteri is a sela. Sela is 4 zuz. V'zuzah. Idilma shish me'ah priti, or 600 prutas v'zuz. Now prutas, 192 prutas equals 1 zuz. So in there we have a shayla. The Gemara doesn't say over here, the Gemara doesn't question 600 azuz and azuz, which is the end of the Gemara. V'zuzah amalei. So right away, dal priti, take out the pennies. Why? The loy kosa b'shtara. A person doesn't write so many, no one says it's worth, this costs 750 pennies, or this costs 600 pennies. Rather, if it's 192 into zuz, what are you going to say? You'll say, okay, it's 3 zuz plus 24. Like that, 192 times 3 is 576, plus another 24, you're 600. So there's no question about it, you're not going to put the prutas. Dal pruta like sabashtara, why? Dasukim maskelu, you add it up, no one counts so many pennies. Umashvile zuz, and he makes it into zuz. So do we say, so this is the shayla, do we say in such a case, it's considered 600 azuz and azuz, or 600, not prutas, that we knocked out, or 600 istrus? The Gemara says, on such a case, shismel istri v'zuzah, shismel zuzah v'chad zuzah. That's really your two options now on the table. Is it 600 zuz and 1 zuz? It's 600 istri and a zuz. On that, the Gemara says, yad bal ashtar, like we learned earlier, is always al hatachtainu. And the halach is he's only going to have 600 istri and a zuz. Zok the Gemara on the top of kuf samach zayin amad aleph. Amar abaya. So right before Taisus does throw in that it is normal to use a lot of zuz. That's what Taisus does. It says even though a person could say, you know what, give me 4 quarters. You mean $1. Such a language is a little more common. Amar Abaya, which means to say is, if a person needs to sign on a plain piece of paper a signature like that, Bezdin can learn from it. We learned this earlier already. We had such a shayla. We mentioned this. That's really from a Gemara in Ksubas. The Gemara in Ksubas, Daf, Chav Aleph over there on the top, talks about a case where Reuven and Shimon died. Reuven and Shimon signed on a shtar. Reuven died, and the halacha is that one person cannot give more than 50% of the testimony on the shtar. So in such a case, what do you do? How do you have a patent? The Gemara says, Reuven should sign his signature on a plain piece of paper. Bezdin's going to come, be Megayim the Chasima. Like that, then you're going to give testimony regarding Shimon. So in such a case, Amar Abayo, don't put your signature ever on the bottom of a paper. Maybe a person's going to come and say, you Reuven owe me $100. Utanan, and we know the halach is, even if there's no edim, as long as there's a ksav yadai, shu chayiv like gayvim nechasim nechayrin. So in such a case, you should always be careful never to sign on the bottom of a page. The Gemara says a Maisa, a very interesting incident that happened with a toll collector, Meichis. We learned about this in the beginning of Hilchah Shabbos. Now there's this toll collector, the Asa Kamei da Abaya. He pulls up the Abaya and he says, I need your signature. Why? Because the halacha was that the Talmidei Chacham and Talmidim had a student pass. They did not have to pay. So he says, how did they get a student pass? They had Abaya sign it on the student pass. He says, I need your signature to be able to make sure that the student pass is not a forgery. Look what we're going to be talking about in a second. We're going to see what type of toll collector was. So Amar Lei tells the Rabbi, next to the Machasimis Yadi, please sign a paper. Why? Now when you tell me them come. Machvili, when they show it to me, like that, I'll give them their student pass. They're not going to have to pay tolls. So Achvile Beresh Megilta, Bai pulls out his pen. He starts signing on top of the page. What happened? Havakanogabe. He started tugging it like that. The paper will end up being that Abai is really signing more on the bottom of the page. He tried pulling the paper back. Abai right away says, calm down already. Amalek Rakadum Rabbanon already told us to watch out for people like you who are trying to play shtick. We already know, and he made sure that he was able to sign Dafka on the top of the page. Now, another halachas, we're going to continue with the theme. You have to be careful that you shouldn't play with shtaris. Amar Abaya. Mitlas vat eser loy lichto b'sof sheet. You have to be very careful. In Lashon HaKodesh, it's very easy to add one kuf samach zayin amad aleph, the middle of the daf. It's very easy to add by putting 1 or 2 letters can change something from 10 to 20, or from shalosh to shleishim, which would mean 30. However, 1 and 2 won't work. Just from 3 till 10, you have to be careful. Loy lichto b'sof sheet. The delma mezai v'kasav. All you'll do is add a yud and a mem, etc. V'yis ramilei. However, what happened, Lamaisa, for whatever reason you had it, that it says, let's say, Eser, at the end of the line, Nahadri lidibure train plus limni. Try to just re-quote yourself, your numbers, a few times like that. You'll eventually have it in between a line. It'll just say, Eser, somewhere else. Why? Yavsha delay misramile be'emsa shita. Zaktig mara vaita hudavik sivbe tilsa bipardesa. He says, I'm giving a third in my pardes. So also machke lagage the base. Now if you look at the base, even in the Gemara, we see how a base looks. Base is basically a vav with 2 lines. He erased the 2 lines. V'chare v'shavye uve pardesa. Now he's selling them and this pardes, not in the pardes. So what happened was, Asik made Abaya. Abaya gave 1 look at the star and he says something doesn't look right. My time vav. Why is there so much space? Because if it was a base, it makes sense now. If you chopped it off, there's a lot of space in the vavs. So Kafte, he tied him up. He was basically threatening. There's a shaila if he taka hurt him or not. The point is, he started tying him up and pulling out the sticks. He realized he's caught the ID, and therefore he was taka maid. Ahu dahavet kasebe manes Ruven and Shimon Achi. The portion of Ruven and Shimon are brothers. And now what happened was, Achi, there was another brother named Achi. So he started to take advantage. Achi. So also kasebe vav v'shavye ve'achi. Now it says, and the brothers. So also kameda abaya. Amalei my time dochik le lahai alma. My time dochik le alma lahai vav kulahai. How's that vav stuffed in the page over there? It was way too squeezed. So kafte, another ma'aser kafte va'oid. Ahu shtarad avachasim aleh rava v'rav acha barada. We're going to go till the mission. We're going to find all these cases where people try playing shtick. So you have a start. The rava and Rav Acha there was 2 signatures. One was Rava, one was Rav Acha barada. Also committed Rava. Amalei Dain. Yes, it is my signature. Chasimis yadadihi. Miu committed Rav Acha barada le chasimili ma'ila. He chapped him by saying that there's no chance I would have signed before Rav Acha barada. He was older than me. I would have given him the covet. Elamai, it's not my signature. So kafte, they tied him up. The ID. So Amalei was wondering, Bishma Didi, I could understand you forge Zayafas, and the Rabbeinu Geshem says, Mishum de Bachar, I know. I'm a young guy and I write it with kavanah. No problem, you're able to understand to forge it. His hand shook from age, he got old. Hey, how can you do it? It's such a hard signature to forge. On that, Amar, he said, he was already an expert forger. He says, mitzvah, which means to say is, he went by the bridge. Even today, if you go to a bridge that has even steel, like steel pipes and all those steel little ropes, they shake. So he says, I went on the bridge and I wrote it while I was holding on to the rope like that, it shook. That was one chap he did. Another chap, and I'm not sure if it's Amri Lord, he said I have 2 patents, or we are saying that it was one of the 2 options. Karma Zanuka, the Kasav Zanuka just means a skin bottle, but he basically went on a big barrel, and the barrel, when it's full of liquid, it moves around. I guess he might have had to shake it in the beginning like that, the liquid is not going to stay put. I think he means he shook the barrel, and then it was shaking, he wrote it Vikasav. Okay, Zaktik Mishnah Vaiter on the Banakov Samach Zayin, Kaisen get La'ish, we write a get. Afal Pi Sheinish Teimai. The Rashbam says, because you could either way force a get on a wife. Vahashoiver in the receipt for a Ksuba Lish, Afal Pi Sheina, Baile Imai. Again, why? Because it's Zachin Ladam Shalai Befanov. It's a schus. The Baile, it's a schus. Ubelvad. However, Shia Makir and the Gemara is going to explain what it means, that the Eidim and everybody needs to know who's involved. Vahabal, who has to pay for writing the star. Nice and Sachar, the Gemara is going to also explain why, because it says in the Torah, the Kasav and Nasan. We're going to see in the Gemara, the Meissen is going to say that. Kaisvin, star l'loiva on the back one, Kuf Samach Zainam Abates, Kaisvin, star l'loiva, Alpha Pin Shein Mal V'imai. It's not a problem to walk over, and guy says, I'm going to Lakewood, I want to borrow money from Reuven, please write me a star. We spoke about this, not a problem. Then Kaisvin l'malva, however, you can never write for a lender on Shilai V'imai. It's quite a double pashat. Again, the Gemara, in all these cases we're going to go to in the Gemara is going to ask Pshita on who pays. The halayve nice and sachar. Another halacha, kaitz shtar l'maych av pishein l'kech imay. You can write a star even though the l'kech is not around. However, vein kaitzin l'lekeach ad shia maycher imay, who has to pay val lekeach nice and sachar. Ein katzin shtar erisin. The nusuin elamidashneim, which is basically the financial obligations that the mechatanim both give, only when they're both dear, because again it's chai for all of them. V'achasan, I was going to say also, what's the chid nice and sachar? Ein kaitzin shtar erisis a kablanis elamidashneim. Either arisas, which means on they get mechzer shusharvia, or chakranis, which is basically a lease. Ella midashneim, who has to pay the makabel nice and sachar. Ein katzin shtar berin. We're going to see the Gemara either means selection or it means to clarify. We're going to see that in the Gemara. V'chol ma'aseh bezdin, any, whether it's a warrant to take away stuff, Zakter Shbam, you're going to drachta, which is a seizure warrant. The halacha is you don't write it ella midashneim v'shneim nice and sachar. In these cases, the halacha is b'shtar berin. The Gemara says you have to pay. They both have to pay schar. Shimgam li'layim l'shneim kaisen. Shnaim l'za'atzma. We write two. Each to his own. The Gemara is going to explain on Kuf Samachas why that is. Zok the Gemara umayu bevad she'em akirin. When the Mishnah says he has to know them. So what is going on? Zok the Gemara. You have to know that it's Reuven, the husband, divorcing Rachel. So what happened was, this was the halacha. Now, the Gemara is going to question, because there was a Maisa there of Safra, for Rav Acha and Yehuda were sitting there, and Rabbi was next to them, overhearing the conversation. This is what happened. Yosef, Rav Safra, Rav Acha, Rav Huna, Rav Chanina, they're all sitting down, they're talking. V'Yosef Abai Gabai is sitting, I guess, in the next table. V'Yasvin, they're sitting in the hand on the Shaila, v'Kimivaylu. Is it really true? Shema Ish beget in, but Shema Isha loy dafka the man, but not the lady, or Shema Isha b'shayver and Shema Ish loy. And Taisus right away says doesn't mean really love dafka. We're saying this lashon of Shema Ish. V'leichosh Dilma kasav Gita v'Azal. Why are we not worried? Maybe she's going to take this get. And go to a different woman with it, or the other way around, Azla. In the case of the Shayver, Kasa Isha Shayver, and we'll give it to a different spouse. Very nice. You know this is Rachel. But Rachel has a husband, his name is Reuven. Maybe he's going to go to Rachel that's married Shimon. Amalu Abaya, so Abaya was there, and he says, Hachim Arab, Shem Ish beget, V'hu Adin L'Shem Isha, and Shem Isha B'Shayver, V'hu Adin L'Shem Ish. And it doesn't really make a difference. All the point is it has to have both spouses' names. Frakting Mara, why we still should have an issue. Maybe in those, again, today it's more common to have two different names, but in those days the little shtetls, it was a very small shtetl. Why are we not worried that there's two Yosef and Shimons? How are you solving this? You're right. In such a case, where there's Shnei Yosef and Shimon Adar Berachas, I don't know why. We're going to see in the next, basically we're going to see later, that all you do is Mishalshalin. Why didn't you write Yosef and Shimon ben Levi? Okay. Why are we not worried? And he's going to make up his name. Who maxically the Shmei Yosef and Shimon because of Gita Mantile Itasadech. He's basically going to make up a different name. Like that, he could go back to his old town. That what? Kol shehuchzak shmai be'er shleishim yaim ein chayshin loin. There's Bamas Masber that up to 30 days, saiv ganav l'tliya. Everyone's going to, if you're going to try to give a fake name, eventually there's going to be a time where eventually you're going to get busted. So a person doesn't take such a high risk. What do you do before that? You know what you do? You surprise him. You know he's still going around saying his name is Reuven. His name is Shimon. You say, hey, Reuven. Does he turn around or not? The Kari Livani, everybody turns around to their own name. He's a trained Mossad agent. He's not stupid. He's going to chazer it. He knows the second that he has to come in, he's going to trigger that name. Therefore, the Rashbam says, Hilkoch ein takanataka ad till his chazer. Zok the Gemara Vaita, hu tavra. There was a shayver. Davachasim Allah Rabbi Yomi Review. So, very nice. And the Isha pulls up and says, this is not, I never got payment. The shayver says my name. Either it wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Someone played around. It's Amar Lavanahavi. It wasn't me. Amar, so Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Ananami Amar Luhu Lavi. I also said, you know what? I don't think it's you. And we're going to see in a moment that we're going to have a problem keeping Shehigit, so there's Bam is Takashver. A lot of Rishonim are learning that what happened was, back when he wrote it, he didn't think it was Rachel, that lady that came a while back. But the Ilam convinced him, therefore he signed it. But now that I see you closer, I realize Taka got scammed. And the reason you have to say they're trying to say it, because the Gemara clearly says, Kivan Cheheged Shuvin Echayzer Magid. Okay, we're going to see in a second. So Amr Le Lavanav, it's not me. Amr, no, not me, Amr Lu Lavi. I also said it wasn't you. But Amr Lu, they said, Nikusha the Kashala. She's getting old. Ubagala Kala, so that's why you're not recognizing. Amr Bai, in such a case, Avagav Damar Abanon. Even though we all know there's Allah and Kupsam Chesam and Al, Kivan Cheheget, Shuvin Echayzem Magit, Surva Rabbana Lav Urchla Meida. Dainu, it's not the Tamid Chacham, and don't go look so well, therefore it's not have a problem of Kivan Cheheget. Ahu Tavra, the Gemara is going to say the other way around. Don't think that you could use this against a Talmid Chacham. It's not me, because I guess word spread that he doesn't look at ladies. He says, no. Amr if it is you. I know Antava, Taka made sure to check. I've got the Tumar Rabban Lav Urchla Meidak. Even though you're right, they don't look at Nashim, but keeping the dog. They make sure, Rabbi Yirmiyah made sure that this is Taka, the Rachel, or whatever the name was they said it was. Amar Abaya, Stam Eitz a Taiva Kamash Malon, Haitzovim Rabbanan, the Azul Kedusha Itisa. Somebody, especially in the places where the mamish don't even meet the kalas so much, they do a basho one time, next time you see them as the chasna. Zok the Gemara, Haitzum Rabbanan, the Azul Kedusha Itisa, you want to marry a woman? Nitba Ma'amaretz Badei, Shlep Ma'amaretz with you. And why? Because the second he looks and he's medayik, he doesn't forget her face. However, Dilma, Machlufu Mineh, you just sit down, you say she's fine, I'm willing to marry her, but you don't really remember her, therefore with the chasna you might get tricked. Vahabal, so now we're going to go through all the pshitas till the Mishnah. Wapshat, who has to pay? Vahabal, nice and sachar. Correcting Mara, my time, a wapshat. Amakra, Bekasav, says in the pasuk, Bekasav and Asan, to tell us the person right says to give it, therefore you have to pay for it. Ve'edna delay of dina hachin. The Maisa we don't do it. Shadu Rabbana Isha, you know why? Kihecha delay l'shaye, because a man can marry as many women as he wants. A lady is stuck with the husband, therefore he was playing around, he was blaming on the chayvas that he can't afford it, so we made it that the Isha pays. Now, how do you stem with the pasuk v'kasav v'nasan? And then you're going to have to answer, either going to say that Einachanami, Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker, or that the Baal tells Bezdin to write it, even though she's the one who's taking out the credit card. Zok the Gemara weiter. Kaisvin shtar l'loy v'alfa pishem alva. We write a shtar, even though the Malva's not there. Pshita. Why would you think otherwise? What's the problem? Like Tzricha, we're talking about Be'iska. Now, I had to Iska, we know that they're both, in such a case, they're both making money, again, we're not going to go into the ribbis that they put in the management fee, etc. But that's the case we're talking about, so it's not so pasha. Why would you think otherwise? Like since he's selling his field, let's say for example, you would have a havamina. A guy has a field in Oklahoma, he's dying to get rid of it, so I come as a buyer, I'm saying, I'm doing you the favor. On that we say, no, kamashmal it is, Rashbam says in Gorma Mitzia, a buyer is the one who's gaining. Very nice. You bought it from me, but let's be real. The buyer is the one who's gaining, therefore he has to pay for it. Pshita. Again, why would I think otherwise? Even if he's the Spitz Bach in Yeshiva, even if he's dying for such a Bach, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't change anything. It's also pshita. We're talking about Babayra, which we know we learned to Cheskabatim, that the Sadis had years that they were fallow, that you waited a year, like they could reproduce, so that was a year that you would say, oh, right now he's not gaining so much. Kamash Malan, Saif Kal Saif, you're the one, the Aris is gaining. Ein Kaitzmin Shtari Beirin. So what is the Shtar Beirin? Elam Dash Neim V'chule. My Shtare Beirin. So Hachim Babosh Targimu Shtare Tanasa. And the Rashbam says it's more than court transcripts. Today's court transcripts just writing the daf, but it's more than that. It's till it's written in the document. The halacha is you could go back in your tainus, like the Rashbam. However, so shtar be'erin means your tainus that you're putting on ksab. Rabbi no, it's talking about the yanim zeloi bar le'echad v'zeh bar le'echad. It's each one could pick a dine, and the third one is going to be the machriya. Zaktig mara, Reb Shimon Gamliel leimel l'shneim kaisim. Maybe we understand the machlekes. If you write two and one is real machlekes, it's koven amidas sadai, because it's zen and it's elachas. Why are we writing two? For Gemara, lema v'koven amidas stam kamifli. The Mar Tanakama is going to hold sava kofen. That's why you only write one. Rav Shimon Gamliel says you can write two. Mar sava and kofen. And that the Gemara says loy. No, the kulam bats and kofen. What pshat Rav Shimon Gamliel? V'acha hainu time Rav Shimon Gamliel da'amelei. He has a valid time. Leinicha lead to have his chusach gabi chusi. The dumb is like you're like a lurking lion. You're ready always to attack. I never want it to be. I want my tinus in my house. You have your tinus. I don't want it on one page. Every time you look at it, you'll think of pretense. I rather separate the two. You have your tinus, I my tinus, and the chiddush of Shimon Gamliel that it's taka a valid tinus. So the Mishnah. Mi shepara mixas chayvoi v'hishlish estaroi dahainu. We're going to learn in the next Mishnayos that the halacha is regarding shayva or not. However, they don't want to pay for a receipt, and the Rashbam says they're both agreeing to put it in an escrow account on a third party. So he's only paying back some of his chayv, and he says, let's give it to Reuven. We both trust him. However, v'amar loyim loy nesati l'chem mekavad yoyim ploni. If I don't pay you back for Chodesh Nisan, I'm willing. He tells the third party, I'm willing for you to take the shtar that says $1,000, even though I only paid $500, and give it back to him. And now that my $500 that I paid is out in the garbage. I have to pay again $1,000. So what is the halach in this case? And more than that, I'm even vater the money I paid. And he didn't pay up, so it's a machlekes. We're going to see why. So what's the machlekes? Rabbi Yais and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yais is up to Mara Sava smachta kanya. What is a smachta? Smachta means you're not really thinking it's going to happen. A person is trying to convince you, right? He says, "Please, I'll even pay. I don't want to borrow. I don't want to lend my car. Chas v'shalom, something happens." He goes, "Don't worry. If chas v'shalom something happens, I'll pay it cash. You won't have to go through insurance. Your rates won't go up." That's mamash smachta. The guy totals a car, right? So he tried convincing him to borrow the car like that. He's not going to have to. He's going to do something. So it's mamash a regular case of a smachta. Do we say it's kanya or not? Now, if we did it in Bezin with a kinyan, there's no shaila. That's not a machlekes. There, everyone agrees that it works. However, when a person talks like that, is he serious? If Yossi Sava Asmachta Kanya, if you do Sava Asmachta like Kanya. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rabba Lochis Kerb Yossi. That Asmachta is Kanya. However, Kyosik Med Rabbi, Amar Levichima Acher, She Rabbi Yochanan, Milamdeinu Pam Rishonim Shni Aloch Kerb Yossi Anima. And he asked, he bats and wanted to say Asmachta like Kanya. He said, but what should I do? Everyone's saying Asmachta Kanya. Rabbi Yochanan, there's Rabbi. Lamaisa, the Gemara comes out with a knockout. They ain't Aloch Kerb Yossi. Remember that? The halach is the Maisa, Asmachta is like Kanya, unless they did a Kinyan in a Chash of the Kabas. Zok Tehei the Gemishna. Mi Shenimchak Shtar Choyvoi. What happened was, the Maisa, your star got erased, whether water went on it, whatever it's gone. The halach is, Maimin Olav Edom. The Edom know exactly what's written in it, and you rewrite it. Ubalef Ne Bezdin Va'oisim Loi Kiyum. They make a Kiyum. What do they write? They write as follows. Ish Pliny Ben Pliny. Reuven Ben Shimon Nimchak Shtarei on this Tuesday behind Pliny. Upliny Edav, and then Lavan Yehuda Edim on Kuf Samachas on a base by the Gemara. So Tanur Rabbanan Ezek Human. What is the Ksav? What is the text that we're writing? Zok the Gemara, they write as follows. B'moisov Tlosa Havino. We were 3 Dayanim Anu. We're Pliny. This is Dayan number 1. Pliny with 3 Dayanim. Hoitzi Pliny Ben Pliny and Reuven Hashem pulls out a star. Machuk Lifanenu when on this Tuesday behind Pliny. Pliny is Edav. However, if they add a clause which means v'imkasav boyus kakanu leidusan shel edim v'nimtzan edusan mechuven as goyve v'ain tzarich lavi raya, which means to say is what are right now currently all you know is there's 2 edim saying I saw the star Sunday morning what it was written. I'm willing to give testimony that there was a star was written, but there's still a chance that the star itself was a forge. You never investigated what really said in the star. So if they check it out, if they put the clause that we taka checked and the edim are made, not just on the star, that they saw the star rather on taka what happened, the halach is ain't tzarich lavi raya. However, v'im lav, it's quite a double pashut, tzarich lavi raya, because it's still possible, yeah, we believe you saw the star, but it's still possible that the star is mizuyif. Zok the Gemara weiter. Nikra, if Nikra, the Gemara is going to explain how we know this, which means it was ripped up on purpose, then it's possible. However, in the Skareya, if it got ripped on its own, it's kosher. So right away the Gemara asks, or nimchak oy nitashtish, it got stained, it got rubbed out, or it got erased. Imr shumei nikr, as long as you can see what it says, it's kosher. So right away the Gemara asks, heichi dam nikra, heichi dam Skareya. How could you ever know if it was done on purpose or not? Rabbi Yehuda as follows. Nikra, when it's ripped, we say it's krashel bezdin. Niskareya means crash enushel bezdin. So heichi dami krashel bezdin. How do you know when something's ripped? Alidei bezdin. Rabbi Yehuda, you know why? They make sure to cut it. The makom edim. Makom is man, makom atayr. If like that, it's all ripped up. It's quite gone. But anywhere else, if it's just ripped somewhere else, we say it happened by mistake. Abai Amar Shasi v'Arav, which is X. The L'chayr Abai is not either arguing on the makom edim. He just says as long as there's a Shasi v'Arav, we say that's how Bezdin was the derech of Bezdin to show how they want to rip up like that. It's quite clear that it was ripped by Bezdin. Zok the Gemara, Hanu Arva'oy, now we're going to say Maisa, the Asal of B'mdisa, there's Yishmaelim, Rishvam says, they pulled up the B'mdisa. They have a country, Arsad Inchi, they'll take away the land of people. But not only would they take away the land, they'll take away their title. So what happened was, the owners came to Abai and they said, please rewrite us a new title. Like that, we'll give them Title 1. They won't know we have Title 2. And then eventually we'll bring them, we'll overpower them, and we'll pull out our old title, which is a copy, a duplicate, like that we can know each one, everyone has their own sons. So also, Mar Vesayla committed Abai. The owners pulled up Abai. Amalei Lechsi. Mar Shtori, V'lichtav Lan, Mar Shtori Chminei. Please write us a duplicate copy. We'll show you the original. You'll write another one. The Misnasis, we'll give them only one. Chanaktin Chabiyadim, we'll give them one. Like that, when we overpower them, we'll have a duplicate to prove it. Amalu, what could I do? My Evelachud, Amar Rav Safra, which is the Shitas Rav Safra, which you're going to see in the next daf. Shitas Rav Safra is, Ein Kaisin, you can never write Shnei Shtaris al Sadachas. You know why? Dilma Tarif al the Tarif. We're always worried you're going to go to the Kuchais. We're going to see on the next Amid how we're worried. If Reuben has 2 loans, he's going to make a patent. The Gemara's going to have to say why, but he's going to make shtick with the people that are taking away his properties, and he's going to go and take twice compensation. So I have a Qatar delay. They weren't letting up. They were bothering him to write a star. So he says, Amalei Safri, he tells his Sefer, Zil Kosav Lahu, Hu Ala Machak, Ve'edav Al Anayar. What you should do is write on the Machak, erase it, and then rewrite something, which is going to be the halacha of if the text is on the Machak and the Edom is on the Nayar, which means not erase, it's possible. We just learned Nimchak and Natasha Shemashur kosher. So why are we not worried if you're going to just write the star and erase it and redo it? Why are we not worried that it's Rishum Nikar? And then he answers, don't write a good star. Just write fake letters. Aleph Beis Kamina. Aleph Beis Ba'ama Kamina, which is regular Aleph Beis. In such a case, what are you seeing behind? You're seeing Aleph Beis Gimel Dal Hey. It's worthless. The kunz is, it's Hu Ala Nayar, Eidav Ala Nayar, Hu Ala Machak. Tana Rabbana. Hare Sheba Va'amar. We're going to see Shitas Chacham and Shitas Gamliel. It's not one of the easiest stuff out there. We're going to try to go through the whole Shaka V'Taryo B'ni Imus. Tana Rabbana. Hare Sheba Va'amar Avad Shtar Chayvi. I lost my star. Afi Pi Shamru Eidim. Even though the Eidim say Anu Kasavnu V'Chasavnu V'Nasanala, we even saw it. We gave it. There's no shaila about it. The halacha is saying Kaisen L'Is Shtar. This is Shitas Chachamim, again, b'mad devar memurib, Zok Gemara, b'shtari halva'a. Al v'shtari mekach u'memker, it's not a problem. Kaisen chutz min achrayis shabai, which we're going to focus extensively. As long as there's no achrayis, you own the land, why not? We'll give you a replacement of your title like that. No one could come and take it away. That Shitas Chachamim, we're on Kuf Samech Tesam at Aleph. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, af shtari mekach u'memker in kaisen. Shimon Gamliel wants to say, even Shtar Memkach you don't write, and the Rashbam says why? Because Reb Shimon Gamliel holds Oisius is Niknois b'Mesira. Therefore, Rechaisha that he gave him back the Shtar, and since Oisius Niknois here, by giving it back, you lost your karka. The Scheiner Reb Shimon Gamliel Aimer Hanoisim Aton al Chaveiroi. A person gives him a ton to his friend. Vehechzilois a Shtar Chazar Matanosai. The Chachamim argues just by giving him a Shtar. How could that work? The Chachamim Aimer Matanosai Kayames. On that, Zaktimar, the reason is, because Shittis Reb Shimon Gamliel is, Isis Niknas B'Masira. So the second you give back that star, we say you lost your matan. So we're going back, we're going to focus on Shittis Chacham, which was the end of the Amud. Amar Mar, Chacham said you could write on a star Mekach Memkar, because he has no problem with Isis Niknas B'Masira. However, you cannot write Achrayas. Amamar chutz me'achrayis shabai. My time, why not? Why don't you write achrayis? So now we saw Shitas of Safra a little. Amar Safra fishein kaisen shnei shtaris al sada achas. We're worried the mazav achayv tarif lelahai is going to go to Reuven, take away his sadahs by saying the owner came and took away my sadah, but you bought after me from Levi. So I want this sadah back, and I bought it by achrayis. Va'azal hai umapechad v'tarv lekuchais. Va'amar le'labachayv. He comes back to the bachayv, and he says, Shaifli de'ekenbus. Let's stay quiet. Let's make a deal. Stay quiet for a few years, and the Gemara is going to question why that is. Why can't you just go without this person by making this staying quiet? He says, stay quiet for a few years. People are going to forget that I took away a sadeh from Lekeach Aleph. A few years later, I'll be able to go Lekeach Beis with the new star, because I have a duplicate. V'hada ta tirfun umapik achrina. V'hada azal tarv lekuchas achrina. Like that, I'll be able to go to a second lekuchas and steal from them. For the fact of Gemara, I don't understand right away. How is he coming? Very nice. He could have a duplicate. But why are you coming from the star of the Alva? The star of Alva has to get ripped up. The key in the Quran of the star of the Mava, but my had the tarfle. What's going on? You're going to tell me you didn't rip it up? You're going to tell me that it wasn't ripped? They're like Quran of Amr of Nachman. The halacha is, Rosh Mama is masber, the way it works, how it works, the process of Bezdin when you pull up with a star, and a person's not paying, you first start with a star, what we call the terfa, which means you're able to go and look, which is the schos, the opportunity to go and take away karkos. And then we have the drachta, which is basically a warrant able to take away karka. After that drachta you take away, when you decide the karka you're taking, you're going to write a star shuma, which is basically evaluating the karka, appraisal, what we call appraisal. And then once you figure it out, then we make the difference, whether it's memala the chayv or not. But since there's a multi-process to get the documents, you don't do anything before ripping the previous documents. So for Gemara, very nice, he's coming to the Koch Sheni with the duplicate. Where are you coming from? You're coming from a Shtar Malva. The Shtar Malva, in order to get to the Tirfa Drachta Vishuma, you had to rip it up. It's not a good terfa, love terfu. And then a drachta, which is the warrant, v'chol drachta like sibik karana la terfa love a drachti. And even the appraisal, v'chol shumi like sibik karana la drachta love shumi. So what is going on? The star was ripped. The more answer is fascinating. You're right. In such a case, it won't work. You know the case it works. Like tzricha, the ka'asi mekayach avase. He's coming by saying that the land was stolen. So in such a case, there's no shtaris. So memela that he knocked out, there's no shtaris. As long as he has a duplicate, he's going to be able to go be'isser, whatever, with fraud, and take away from a second lekucha shaloikadim. Why is he putting the Baal Chayv and making a deal with him? Why is he telling him, Shoifli Bahai Ara, let's stay quiet and let me live in this karka for a few years? Now that I have two stars, the keep the knuckle stay star, tarif the tarif. Keep this guy out. Stay to yourself and go twice. The more says, if you have a few years, people are going to forget what happened. But what happens is, if you go twice to Reuben and Shimon, there eventually the roost is going to get uncovered. They're going to realize that what you did was, you really only had one karka that you need to get compensated. You're going to two lukuchais. So in such a case, it's better to make a deal with him. Stay quiet. A few years later, no one even remembers what happened. Why don't you write a new star? But you put in a good receipt that it says as follows. Any star that you're trying to pull out against this karka is psul in the bar, except this one, the one that has the brand new time, which is the second star. Someone is said for Papa, from here we see Ein Kaisman Shaifer, which is Ein Kaisman Shaifer, which we know is really Machlekes Tanoim, which we're going to see. If you write a receipt, the Shaila to write a receipt is to be Shaimer Menach Borim or not. Here we're showing us, by Shtar Mekach, we don't write a Shaiver, because we don't want to say that the person has to protect his star from the Achbar. On that, Amr Lahu, Shaila, whether it was Rav Ashi or Rav Papa, it's really Taloi who it was, the Amrila. One Kuf Samach Tasim base. Amalu Rav Ashi Ba'ama Kaisim Shoiver. Batsim, I would tell you, do write a receipt. There's nothing to do with the mission we're learning later. So you know what the chiluk over here is. Here we're worried. The Dil Mazab Al Chayv Tarv Minei de Lekeach. You're right. He's going to pull up to this Lekeach number one. Va'azalihu v'tarv lekuchis. Where is this receipt that you're writing? The Shaiva Magab Lekuchis is Leka. The Shaiva is not by the random Lekuchis. Lekuchis are regular innocent people that bought a karka. So they're not involved in this halva, in this receipt. Okay, I got that. Then they're going to be able to come and take away the lekuchas. But what do you think that the lekuchas are going to do? Lekuchas also bought a bachrayis, Dr. Gemara. And if they bought it b'achrayis, they just lost their field. Who are they going to go back? They're going to go back to the person they bought it from. So eventually it's going to get uncovered. What's the chiluk? Says the kuchas lav amori da'ara adri. They're not going to go back to the original owner. Mar answers, you're right, but by the time they go back, meanwhile, this scammer is knowing he's going to get caught. He's willing to get caught. He's going to eat up all the payers quickly and go try taking money away from a scammer. Once the money's gone, it's much harder to take it out. Or inami, make it easier. You know why I'll never get caught? Since it's not b'achrayis, he's not going to bother going back to the original Murray and original owner. For tomorrow, we have the same problem by Shtar Ava, that eventually he's also going to have the same issue, l'chayri, he's going to give it, and he'll get caught. The Achi Shtar Ava Nami. Mar answers over there, it's different. Hasam de Zuzi Masik. It's very little fascinating, this concept, that where it's Alva to Karka, your brain thinks different. This is the Gemara. The Gemara says that when it's Alva, so person, you owe him money. He's going to say, wait a second, I want to double check that you didn't get paid. It's interesting. By Karka, we say otherwise. By Zuzi, Masik, okay, he must have paid a price about Chay by Zuzi. Let me give him. So I have to give it to him. I have no choice, and I don't go to the original owner. Meshenkin Hacha, since we're talking about Karka that we want, the Ira Masik, made the Yadi, he knows it, he tells himself in his head. The Masik Ira, Bezuzi Lemefayis. A person doesn't want Karka, doesn't want money. A person wants Karka. So he thinks in his head, oh, Elamai, he already went through the channels, so let me give him the karka. And only later does he go back to the Marikama. But he doesn't say, wait a second, pause, I want to go first, double check with the owner. Amamar, chutz min achrayis shaboy, heichi kasvinot. Where do we write this? Amar av Nachman de kasvi hachiran kuf samach tesam abeiz in the middle of the Amid. This is what you write. Shtara dinan, de loy migveve, loy mimishtabdi, veloy mimnei chari. You can't take away from the chasmu shabadim. Ela heki hecho, they take him ara biyad de lekech. Amar av Amra. So you clearly put a clause. There's no achrayis. Sounds like without this clause. Zois Amaris, achrayis is to seiferhu. Why? Time and the kasav lehachi. Haloi kasav lehachi gavi. If he wanted to write this, he would have been able to be gaiva. And Rashi says, no. Vasham achrayis la to seiferhu. You know what it means? My chutz, my achrayis shaboy. The loy kasav achrayis. It doesn't rain achrayis. Dr. Gemara, very geschmack weiter. It saw there was this woman, the Yavle Zuzi. So he gave a shaliach money lahu gavra lemisn la'ara. Now, she clearly wanted him to buy the karka b'achrayis. He, for whatever reason, did not understand that, and Azel Zavan lo shaloi b'achrayis. Now, also commander of Nachman. Amar lei, what can he do? I sent you to help me, not to ruin, not to hurt me. So zil zavni minei shaloi b'achrayis. You as a shliach have to go sell it to her. You bought a shaloi b'achrayis, the sale is done. V'had zavni lei b'achrayis, which is the basic question, which we all had in the Daf Yomi. I don't understand. If I didn't do my shliach, I didn't do my shliach, so the sale is gone. Why should the shliach have to buy the karka? So they were trying to give him a few mahalchim. Either that the seller did not know, he didn't tell the seller anything, or even make it easier. You're right. The seller sold you the karka. But you know what? The seller is gone. He took the money, he left. You're stuck with what? What they saw there's a shliach who bought it. Now that you didn't listen to the mishaleach, you have no choice. You have to go buy it and basically take the risk. You're taking that money, you're selling to the isha, and now all you end up losing as a shliach is a chrayis. Rav Shimon, Megamliel, Oimer, Hanoisim Atonal Chaver, Vehechsel is the star. This is what we saw early in the Brisa, which was top of Kuf Samach Tes. The halach is Chazra Matanasa. Chachamim Oimer Matanasa Keyemes. So right away, for Ekdamar, my time, the Rav Shimon Gamliel. What shot the Rav Shimon Gamliel holds that what? The second you give it back, you lost your matana. Omer Vasi, you know why? Because when I give you a star matana and I have Isis Niknas Mimasira, I'm basically saying as long as the star is in your hands, it's yours. The second you give it back to me, it's gone. So that's Zaktumara. Omer Vasi, Nasikoim, Lesadazuna Sunalach. Kolzman, only Shashtar Biadacham. Masko Rabba. Frek Rabbi, I don't understand. You're going to tell me if it gets lost in a fire or gets stolen, whatever it is, it's gone. Because it's not in your hands, it doesn't make sense. And we have to remember this very important, this Rabbah, because we're going to go back to this in the next daf. So let's focus on this Rabbah that holds what? Rabbah, because of this Kashi, he says, there's Shimon Gamliel Savar what? Isis is Niknas Mimasir. Rabbana Savri ain't Isis Niknas Mimasir. So again, to remember the sheet this Rabbah, because it's very crucial to understand the flow of next daf, is that according to Rabbah, which we had no choice to say, Rav Shimon Gamliel is the one who's going to hold is Isis Niknas Mimasir. Turn Rabbana. Something fascinating. A person, we always say, as the lawyers always say, keep your mouth shut. Never add, never talk. Don't talk. Just stay quiet. What did this guy do? He was Eiber Chacham. He had a chazakah more than Gimel Shanim. If he would have stayed quiet, he wouldn't open his mouth, we wouldn't have this Gemara. However, what he did was, he says, oh, I also have a star. Let me go show you my star. Now, he should have stayed quiet, he would have wanted. Now, he put a spoon in his mouth because he goes back to his house to find the star. Veinenu. So what is the halach in such a case? Now that you open your mouth and you said you have a star, are you stuck with the star? This is the shah in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to ask, which is an interesting type of question, very fascinating. The Gemara says, which doesn't mean, what is the machlekes of Yaisi, which you just had, asmach dekane. Zaktor Shbam, mitoch kach will understand the machlekes between Rabbi and Rav Shimon Gamliel. So what happened was, this person opened his mouth and he said, I also have a star. The halach is, according to Rabbi, nidoin b'shtar, divrei Rabbi. So the shaila is Rabbi Michael, Rabbi Machmir, Rabbi saying, Huadin, you could use a star. But Shimon says, no, Omer v'chazaka. This is the shaila, but my kamifluki. This is Mar's question. What exactly are they arguing? Umitoich kach, Zakter Shbam, neida perish abraisa. Till now, we don't understand the machlekes b'chal. It's not that we understand the machlekes, we're just trying to figure out the beer machlekes. We don't know the machlekes. So we're going to give a few mahachim, we're going to have Rav Dimi, we're going to have multiple options. Ki asir Rav Dimi amar ba'oisiois niknois b'mesira kamifluki. Rav Dimi right away wants to say the machlekes is if Isis niknois b'mesira, then what? Reb Shimon wants the top of Kufayt. Reb Shimon Gamliel savar ein Isis niknois b'mesira, and that was the star. So if you don't have Isis niknois b'mesira, you have no choice but to use a chazakah. And the Shmam right away says, avad the chazakah doesn't mean cheskes gimel shanim. Chazakah means that he did a chazakah of no go to paras. You put up a fence, Dr. Shmam. Avada, now that you're there for Gimel Shanim, you don't have a problem with Chazak Sheni Matayna, because part of your taina is what? That I made a real kinyan. So since when I gave this star, it was Isis Niknas B'Mesira, I hold doesn't work, therefore you have to come with the Chazak. For Rabbi Savar, Isis Niknas B'Mesira. Amala Abaya, this is what we said, we have to focus on Rava, we just learned. For Abaya, I don't understand. In Cain, Peluktala Demar, you're going to argue what Rabbi just said a moment ago, the bottom of Amad Beis. That what the Rabbi clearly say, but Isis Niknas B'Mesira, Rav Shimon is the one who holds, Isis Niknas B'Mesira. I'm going to leave it tiflik. I don't care. Let me argue on Rabbi. What do you want from me? Abai says, no, this is what I'm asking you. Rabbi asked a simple question. Because if it gets lost, how do you understand that? So we added Lamai, we came out to the Machlekes, that what? Isis Niknas Mimsira. And over there we clearly said, Rav Shimon Gamliel is going to hold Isis Niknas Mimsira. VMK, and you have a stira. Kasha, Rav Shimon Gamliel. Top of the Amud, the first line says, Rav Shimon Gamliel Savar. Ain't Isis. Bottom of the Amud over there by Rabbi, which you're trying to say we have to agree. Rav Shimon Gamliel holds Isis Niknas Mimsira. Says the stira. Abai gives a new mahalach. We leave Rav Dimi, and he says as follows. And you know what the star is? When this guy said I had a star. What happened was he pulled out the star. But in the star was a car of apostle. And what's the problem? Look there, Rav Meir, Rav Elazar, come in for we have a machlekes, Rav Meir and Rav Elazar. Rabbi, Savala, Rav Elazar, the Amar, Eidim, Mesira, Karsi. It's a big shilas, big machlekes. When a person writes a get, does he really need a sign? Does the Eidim need a sign to get a not? If you hold Eidim Mesira Karsi, which means to say is, what's triggering the divorce? Karsi, which means to separate, right? The divorce. Karsi, the Mesira, it's good enough. There's no need to write Eidim. As long as the Eidim see it, there's no need to write it. Rav Shimon Gamliel Savar, Karameir, Dama Eidi Chasima Karsi. So we're talking about in such a case where there's a get that you cannot rely on the Eidim. So only if you hold the Eidim Mesira would it work. If you hold Eidi Chasima, you have nothing to do. Frek Nemara, I have an issue with this. You're going to try to tell me that Rav Shimon Gamliel holds a Karameir that doesn't hold the Eidim Mesira. We have a different problem. Even Rabbi would agree. V'amar Rab Abba, Maida Hayir Rabbi Elazar that holds Eidim Mesira Karsi. B'mezuyaf Mitaychu Shu Pasol. He's just talking about when there is no Eidim. Period. The second you have Eidim, which is Pasol, you're making it worse. In such a case over here, you're telling me that what? We're talking about a carve apostle. Even Rabbi Elazar is going to agree that it's not going to work such a case. So what is Pshat and Rabbi? Elamar Ravina, Rabbi Avina, Ravina, Hakol Maidim. Shem Kasabais Kakanu. Leidusan Shaleidim Ninsa, Seidusan Musiyafashi apostles, no Shail. Kedar Baba. However, you know what the machlekes is? He basically goes with Shita Sabaya. Instead of saying carve apostle, you know what? There was no Eidim, period. So then we're back to the machlekes. The Rabbi, Karsi, and therefore we can understand that the guy is a good star. And there's no Eidim on this. Therefore it's missing the Eidim Chasima. Therefore he has to come on to Chazak. That's one teretz. We learned this extensively when a person pulls up the star and he says, I wrote it. Does it need to be mekayim or not? We went through barichas, why there's no problem. Pesha asa, pesha hitter, v'chule. We went through that. The Rabbi Sava ma'id b'shtashe kasu ain't tzarich lekayim. Therefore, it's good enough to use this shtar. Reb Shimon Gamliel Sava tzarich lekayim. He's not being mekayim. He has to use a chazaka. Fraktig Mara, we have the opposite in Baba Mitzia. Va'ifcha shaminu lahu detanya. You're telling us this halacha, but we have a problem. The Gemara in Baba Mitzia says as follows: Shnayim adukim b'shtar. You have two people holding on to shtar. Mal v'ayim shalihu. In a fell. That's what I have in the Matzasik. And I picked it up. You're right, Shalihu really. Upartichala, I already paid you. The halacha is Yiskayim Hashtar B'chaisamav Divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe clearly holds, sounds like, Rebbe's going to hold Tzarich L'kaimai. Rav Shimon Gamliel Aimer Yachlaiku. So we clearly see Rav Shimon Gamliel's shita is that you are Yachlaiku. V'avin and Bava. Leslie Rabbi held it tonight. Rabbi doesn't hold the Mishnah, but Mitzia Shnei Mechzem Metalis. Zayin Mitzia V'Zem Mitzia Zay Shava Shein Lo Ba Pachas Mitzach Mechatziv Zay Shava Shein Lo Ba Pachas Mechatziv Yachlaiku. He's going to argue in the Mishnah in Daf Beis. V'Amar Rava. This is all the Masechta Mitzia Daf Zayin. V'Amar Rava Amar Nachman B'Mekuyim. There's no Shayla Kulam Alei Pligi Yachlaiku. Even Rabbi is going to agree Yachlaiku. You know what Rabbi's saying? Ki Pligi B'Shein Mekuyim. Rabbi Sava what? Ma'idib Shtashe Kasu Tzarich L'Kaimai. Therefore, he's not going to get any of the star. V'mekayim le in echanami gavi palka. He'll split it. V'loi, we say it's a piece of paper. Chas v'lamu. Shem Gamliel savar ma'idib shtashe kasu ain't tzarich l'kayim. That's why it's v'yachleiku. So again, the question is very simple. Over here, we're having a machlekes. Rabbi in Rav Shimon Gamliel and Bava Mitzia, we're telling us it's yachleiku. And then the Gemara says, Epoch, you know what? You have to flip the shitas in Bava Mitzia. Flip it, that what? It's Rabbi holds Yachlaiku, and Rav Shimon Gamliel is one who's going to say, Yiskayim Ashtabach Hasamov, like what we're trying to do over here, the Iba Sema is, that Rabbi holds Ein Tzarich L'Kaimai, Rav Shimon holds Tzarich L'Kaimai. Iba Sema Light Light Tefach. You're right, there's no machlekes, they're not flipping it. So what's the machlekes? Rabbi and Shimon Gamliel, Elahacha, Belevarer, Kamiflagi. Lavar kamiflagi means what happens when a person uses and says two tainas. In such a case, do we say that he has to be mavar both of his tainas? That's what we always say, stay quiet. So in such a case where the person said, I have a edim, he has to have a star, he has to go now, Zok Rabbi. Now you also got to use your star because you open your mouth. Ubechazak, as it comes out, lefidus mahalach, Rabbi's be machmer. Shimon Gamliel says, no, let's be real. Chazaka works just because you said you have a star. Why should you lose out? You thought you had your star, you pulled up, it's gone. Why should you lose out? The more brings a Maisa Kadar, Yitzchak bar of Yosef, have a Masik Bezuzi bar Baba, and Asik Medar of Yitzchak Nafcha, they were arguing if he paid back. Amar Praticha b'fnei Pliny, not only that I paid back in front of Reuven and Shimon. Now the halach is, Hamal v'beidim, ain't tzarich for beidim. He could have easily stayed quiet and said, I paid back. He could have just stayed quiet. But instead he said, I paid back in front of Reuven and Shimon. So now, Dr. Yitzchak, Amalei of Yitzchak, now that you open your mouth, you said you paid back in front of Reuven and Shimon. Yavoy plenty v'yidu. Amalei, he was bothered. He said, what do you mean? If I want to open my mouth, if they're not going to come, why not? So why in the world should I lose out by just opening my mouth? Amalei, I know, but he kashmaitz the mar severely that what the Rav Abba, Rav Ada, Rav Abba, Rav Oim lechaver particha b'fnei plenty. Tzarich shiavayu plenty v'yidu. Here we've seen this concept of Rabbi, which is when a person opens his mouth, he has to pay. Amalei ba'amar of Gidam Rav halach is kedivrei Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. The halach is not like Rabbi. So why are you causing me issues? Va'af Rabbi, even Rabbi, loy amar levar, which means to say it makes even more sense to say that halach is a cool. Like Reb Shimon Gamliel, even Rabbi is just saying you have to be levar what you said. On that, he says, Amalei, no, I hate to break it to you. No, I'm in the Var Kamina. Kaloi mazak dershvan karebi severely. I hold like Rabbi, and if you're not going to be mevar your dvarav, you open your mouth, the halacha is hifsid. Well, on the Mishnah of Kuf, Ayin, Omid Beis. Mi sheparab mixas chayvay. Now, a person has a star, he has to pay back Rosh Chodesh Nisan $1,000 loan. However, he comes back and he only pays back, he comes back a few months prior to the alva, the deadline. He says, I have $500 I would like to pay you back. So you have a few options. Either you could rip up the original document and rewrite a brand new one, or you could write a receipt on that you pay that $500. What is the halacha? Mi shabar mixes chayvay. Rabbi Yehuda Imer Yachlif. What the halacha is you have to do is, in a chanami, you rewrite a brand new document. The shaila is when you write the zman. We know we're going to write it from the zman harishan, like we're going to see in the Gemara. However, what you do is you basically throw out the original document and write a brand new one for $500. Rabbi Yossi Omer, no, yichtay shayvi, you write a receipt. Rabbi Yehuda tells Rabbi Yossi, I don't understand. Now that you have an extra piece of paper, he's going to have to be careful the mice don't eat it. More than that. And now you're going to be afraid, you're going to be pressured much more to pay back your extra $500 to get rid of that paper. Like that, you don't have to watch from the Achbar. Rather, instead of Rabbi Yehuda, Ela Bezdin, instead of its Eidim, it's Bezdin Mekar Nashtar, V'koysin L'shtar Acher, from when? Mizman Arish. Amalev Nachlev Avuna, V'amalev, some say Tzabir, V'abel Avuna. Ishmirle the Rav, HaBreis, which are going to go by Riches and Kufay and Aleph. The Tanya, it says Eidim, underline that word Mekar Nashtar, V'koysin L'shtar Acher, Mizman Arish, and have a Hadabay. Because he says only Dayanim, only Bezdin. What do you mean? It clearly says Eidim. Amalei, no, Shmirle, Taka heard it, and he still was not chayzer from it. So on Kuf Ayin Aleph, Amad Aleph, Zok the Gemara, Bishlama Beit Dina, we can understand, because Alimi Lafkuim Amayna, they always have a koyach of what the Hasker best and Hefker. So we understand that they take a stark, rip it up, and write a new one. Ela Eidim, what are Eidim? All they are is Shluchim. Sha'asu Shechusin, the Torah gives them a koyach that they're able to be Naman, but that's it. Shechusin Chayzim Aisu Shechusin. How could you go and just do whatever you want? Rabbi Yehuda Marav says a person in Eidim could write as many stars they want, even on one field. Rabbi Yosef Amar, no, you know we're talking about such a case. In a case where a person lost a star and you want to rewrite it, so Rabbi Yosef, you're right. Amar b'shtar matana. Now b'shtar matana, there's no lakuchas involved. It's just a matana, most typical matana, shalei b'achrayis. V'rabba, sounds like they're not really arguing. V'rabba, Amar b'shtar she'em b'achrayis. So it's very similar. Even by a shtar mechira, I'm talking about Avada, but there's no achrayis, therefore there's no problem. So, for what is that brisa that we said? Oh, if Rav would have heard of this brisa, he would have been chayzer. So my brisa, the Tanya Aresha, Nation boy, Elav Zus, someone owed $1,000 to par ben chamish Zus, and he paid back $500. The halacha is Eidim Mekarin Sashtar v'Koysin L'Shtar Acher, from when? Mizman Rishon Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. However, Rabbi Yossi Mishtar say, yeah, Munach Mimkaimai, and you should write a receipt. V'yichduvu Shayver. You know why? Achas. You know, and now there's a receipt, Kadesh Yachuf, live fight, right? Like that, it'll be pressure to pay from the Achbar. Achas, Kadesh Yigvim Mizman Rishon. Now, Taisus is Masber, Mizman Rishon, that Rabbi Yossi did not know that Rabbi Yehuda explicitly said Mizman Rishon. However, our Gemara, we know that Rabbi Yehuda holds even Mizman Rishon, it's Taisus Mizman Rishon. Rabbi Yehuda like Pirsh, Rabbi Yossi Mizman Rishon, it's Taisus. It's the second to last Taisus Kuf Ayin Aleph. Al B'braisa he shnui b'milsa the Rabbi Yehuda Fiyah Emes. Okay. Frekti Mara of Rabbi Yehuda Nami Mizman Rishon Kamer. Hachi Kamer Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. This is what Rabbi Yossi is telling Rabbi Yehuda, because he didn't know this. He writes as follows. He tells him, Mizman Rishon Kamer. Okay, then we agree. However, we're just arguing about the shaver. We're just having machlekes if we write a shaver or not. However, Mizman Sheini, if you're going to even say you rewrite it by Mizman Sheini Kamer, the shaver and the Mizman Rishon. However, we know they're never really arguing more than one zman. Tana Rabbana, to more than one concept, just about the shaver. Tana Rabbana, what is the halacha? We're talking about Kipshuta, solar calendar. It says 9/11. The person 9/11, 2020, whatever, you open it up, 2020, you open it up, it comes out of Shabbos Yom Kippur. So it's very hard to believe. A person wrote on Shabbos Yom Kippur. We did have one shiloh in Daf Yomi is that if it's really a solar calendar, Mechatesi, maybe it was might say Shabbos. Monoshach. If you tell me it's not the Hebrew date, it's very possible it could have been Mitzvah Shabbos, etc. Zok Tigmar, Shtar Shizmani Kosab Shabbos, Oy Basar B'Tishrei. We say that's a Shtar Mocher because it doesn't make sense he wrote it on Shabbos Yom Kippur because of Rabbi Yehuda. However, Rabbi Yossi Paisel, Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, V'aloi Ma'aser Bala Fanecha B'Tzipayre, and you in such such a case and you kashered it. Why are you telling us it's possible? Amalei, you're right. I only kashered in a case of Yom Kippur, but not a Shtar Mocher. Amalei K'Shecharti B'Zeh Chsharti. Rabbi Yehuda is also talking about a case of Tishrei and Shabbos, of Yom Kippur and Shabbos. No one has a shayla. Shemus kakanu leinasa shel shtar. We look at the time. V'nimtzas anasim chuvenes b'Shabbos or Tishrei. We say it's a shtar mochu v'kosher. There's no shayla. We know there was a mistake. LMI. It was post dated. One kuv ein aleph amid base. Loi nechlaku. The whole shayla is the whole machlekes is when ela b'shtar mocher ba'alma. When you have a shtar mochel ba'am, which we're not sure, could have been on a Tuesday, regular day. In such a case, we don't know. The Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei, the Amari kaisin shaver, relay nafik minei churva. let's just give a little context. What the destruction? What could happen so bad if you write a receipt? So we explained this. We mentioned this a little earlier in Get Pasha regarding the Shtar Makusher. By Shtar Makusher, we said that the person writes what? He writes it a year later this month for the covenant for the Melech. So word by Shtar Makusher, you could open up to make a Shtar Pasha, and what would happen? It would be a post-dated. So imagine the exact same concept. You have a receipt that's post-dated. A person borrows on January 1st, 2020. He has a receipt that's post-dated. It's not going to help. What we chayshish is that you're going to borrow in economic. You're going to pay it back. You're going to write a receipt. But we're worried is that the next time you borrow, which is going to tie in that, just like by the Shtar Makusher, we're worried that it's a post-dated time. Such an issue is going to be, so he's going to tell you it's not this loan. V'araya, it's a different date. So in such a case, if you write a shoiver, then it makes sense we should be worried about a post date. Because what's the shoiver say? The shoiver says you paid back when? January 1st, 2020. What is this shtar say if it's a shtar mucher? 2021. So what does it help to pull out a receipt that you paid me back 2020? You don't want to say, yeah, that was for a different chayv. But I have a shtar that says what? 2021. So therefore, it's totally if you write a shaver or not. If you write a shaver, we have to be worried about shtar mocher. So according to Yehuda b'chlal, you don't write a shaver. There's no problem with shtar mocher. However, the shaver says, well, January 20, because he's going to have a shtar mocher, which really the avol was before January 2020. But since it's a mocher, it says January 2021. And he's going to come and ask him for the loan. He's going to pull out a receipt, which is a different date, the earlier date of the MS, the real time, and he's going to end up being able to do fraud. Even the mandama holds you do write a shaver. That's hanimili a palga. The hainu, if a person, we understand palga, you want to pay back half. So if you want to pay back, no problem, I'll write you a receipt. However, by kula, which you're coming back and saying you want your whole money, then I say you have to have your shtar hava. I'm not willing to take a shaver. You have a taina, you lost it too bad, you shouldn't have lost it. Velohi lemaisa fila kula kasvinon, and the taka makes sense. Bechlal should be at the corner like that because we want people to lend money. Imagine I'll never be able to get my money back. Also, give back the money. I'm going to have the shtarai. I have a shtar v'shal. Have the shtar. Give him no problem. Give him the shtar v'shal zuzach. I'm going to shtar chayichesli. I lost my shtar. But I don't have a problem because I'll write you a shaver. Echt toiv l'chad tavra. I'm going to Rav Shmuel dami tavai in kaisin shaver. He says, very nice, Rabbi Shmuel says this. Omar, he says, he starts with the Akdama of a derech covered, but we're going to argue. Omar, man yoivlan ma'afrid the Rabbi Shmuel. Whoever could give us the das for Rabbi Shmuel, Ramina Beinai, we're going to put in our eyes. But there's basically trying to say it's a Lashon covered Akdama that he's about to argue on them. Rabbi Yechanan Bar Shlakish, Dami Tavai, we do write a shaver, not like Rabbi Shmuel, Kaisin shaver. V'chein ki aser Rav and Amar Rabbi Kaisin shaver. Umestabra that it makes sense to kaisin shaver. Then we're going to say why. You're going to lose your shtar as a malva. Imagine a guy has $1 million loan. It's not the government. The guy has Reuben lent him $1 million as a chesed. He pulls up to the block. He sees the whole house on fire. He's going to start dancing. That's it. His loan is gone. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't make sense. He should start dancing. Oh, so what's the shaver help? Then the malva is going to be happy. I'm going to rub it in. Yes, you know what? Tough luck. One of you are going to have to suffer. Who should it be? The leiva. Therefore, it makes sense that the upper hand goes to the malva and the shaver and the concept. Whoever has to hold on to the document makes much more sense to say there'll be the leiva, and if taka he loses his document, the malva could take advantage and steal. Tanan also shtarei chayf. Ha-mukdamim if it's predated psulin. Va-mucharin if it's post-dated it's a ksher. Amram Nuna, lo yishon shtar alva. Dafka shtar alva, av shtar mekach umemchar. We're worried. Hafilu mucharin nami psulin. My time. Zimnin the mazon la'arbe nisan. Now, and also those days, those days was even common to say, you're desperate for cash. I will sell you, I'll buy this property with a tanai that as long as within 90 days you're able to come back, maybe with a little interest, you have to make it worthwhile for me, but you're able to come back within 90 days and buy back the karka. So I sell you a karka Rish Chodesh Nisan. I tell you a tanai that what? You could buy it back in the next few months. You could come back and buy it. Imagine I write you a post-dated shtar. You know what's going to happen? You're going to write a post-dated shtar a year later. You're going to pay me the money because you're desperate. That's why you're even paying me. That's why you're not going to go for it. You're going to say, okay, give me the shtar. Shtar is post-dated. You're going to come back a year later with the shtar that's post-dated and say, what do you mean? I bought it from you again. Look, you paid me. You paid me. That was a year ago. This is a brand new bechira. So let's see it inside. My time. He's going to sell him the karka Nisan. V'kosiv lei, what is he going to write? It's post-dated b'tishrei. U'misram lei, and then in between Nisan and Tishrei, they made up a deal. He's going to come back and buy the karka again. U'misram lei zuzi beinu beini v'zav leminei. V'chimatu Tishrei. Now that he has a post-dated document that says Tishrei, mapik lei. Now you paid me back. You have the problem with Avo. Shtarvo nami zimnin diyazev b'nison. V'kosel imamish the exact same case. Shtar b'tishrei. U'misramele zuzi beinu parley. He's going to pay him back. V'amalei havli shtarai. I want my shtar back. And he's going to tell him v'amalei yerchesli. V'kosel tavra. So he's going to write a receipt, but the receipt has the real date. V'chimat zimnin mapikle. And then he's going to pull out the original document that he was lying about. V'amalei hani hashtu diyazav minoi. Now this is a brand new Avo. That the more answers, you're right. Kasaver and Kais and Shaver. We don't write a Shaver because if you would write a Shaver, you wouldn't be able to avoid it. Amle Rav Yemer of Kahana, Amila, someone that sits Rav Yemer of Diftil of Kahana, Inno, do we do Taka, the Kasina Shtar Mukhar, the Kasina Tav? We do write a Shaver. Mike of Dina Hachi. How can we do this? With the Gemara just Masber, that we should be worried. Amalei, Basra, the Amalu, after you're right, after the Rabbi told the Safra that we have this new clause, this new Mahalach, Kikasivasai, Shtar, Ma'ochri, Kasvahacha, this is what you write. Shtara Denan. This star is Loi Bezimne Kasvinu. We did not write it at its proper time. Rather, it was a post-dated. Lachrinu Kasvinu, we wrote it at a different time. Amalei, Avashiv Kahana, they know that we don't do this. The Loi Kavdin and Hachi, how could you write it? So he says you're right, but Basra, Amalei Safra Safre, Kasvi Asai, Hani Tavre, Monoshach. The Asai Zimna the Shtara Kasu. Right original time. Then you're not going to have a problem. Eli, and if you don't know the time, Kasu Stama. Leave it blank, like that. Whenever he tries to come for the chayv, you'll just pull out the shaver. The chalemas, the nafik la ra'e, will always be bad for him because he's always going to pull out the shaver. More than that, very crucial, the Rashbam says the malva is never going to be able to lend him the exact same money because he's constantly holding on to a receipt that says I paid back $1,000. And we're going to see this very geschmack in the Gemara later where it talks about splitting the 500, 50-50. It might be a chap to avoid this concept, why he could do that. The Gemara doesn't say that, but we said that yesterday. It makes much more sense, especially understanding that the malva can never write him the exact same loan again. Someone to say it's Ravashi Kahana. We're on the final daf. So you don't do these times. I feel very bad. Rabbana takinu. We just gave a bunch of options for you. Man the ovid, man the loy ovid. You lost out. You don't want to listen. It's not my issue. So Amalu Rava by Rav Shila. That's a new concept. We're going to say a new halach. Amalu Rava by Rav Shila. Lahani kasvoi shtari akniosam. So this is the final daf, yesterday's daf. We learned this last night. If a person, when they're writing a shtar kinyan, ki kasivasa shtar akniosam, when you're writing the shtar kinyan, so you're writing on history. Basically, they brought this property 6 months ago, but now you're writing the shtar. So if you know the exact date, right? Kasu. V'loi. If you don't know the exact date, don't start guessing around. Right? The day that, at least today, of Sunday that you're writing this shtar. But why? Because if you're just going to guess and make up a time, it's going to look like a shtar sheker. They say, how could that be? 9/11, you were somewhere else. So it's better off, don't guess, and write the new date of today. Whether Rav and Rav Huna both tell the cipher. Which means to say you're in Muncie. You're talking about Alva in Lakewood. So we're writing the shtar in Muncie of a Hava that took place in Lakewood. Don't skip that, because what can happen is, years later people can say, I remember this Hava wasn't in Lakewood. Oh, it says Muncie, it wasn't Muncie, it was in Lakewood. Not realizing that we're talking about the shtar and the Hava. Put in every detail that's possible. And Kikamasa Behini. If you're writing the shtar in Lakewood, Kasa Behini, write that you're writing in a Lakewood. V'afagav, the Mesiran, the Chomila Bashila, even though what you're talking about happened in Muncie. So make sure to protect yourself, again, for the same reason that people shouldn't think it's a fraud later on. A person has a shtar that says $100 for Amar, and he says, without the malva over there, if the malva is there and he gives a shul, it's not a problem. I know, I don't want to pay for a cipher. I know this guy can't afford, he's going to be paying me payments. So I want to have 2 stars ready for him. Sounds fair. Now, again, this is not when the original chayv happened. He's pulling up later, after they already wrote a document for 1,000. He says, let's rewrite it. You have to know what his taina is so much. What, the cipher costs money? Then you're rewriting it now. So it's not so much about the sefer costing money, it's about make it easier, I might not find a sefer, etc. Loi mashvinalu, we don't listen to my time. Of the Rabbana Milsa, the Nichel Malva, Nichel Leiva. They both, what's the concept that both should have equal ground? Nichel Malva, we all know Kadesh Yachal Fire. Like the Mishnah says, in order to watch himself in the Achbarim. V'nichel Leiva, Kihecha, the Nifkim Shtare. We all know that Shtar Pagam, what is the halach if you're Maida? The Shtar that was paid somewhat, you have to be Chai, you Chai V'Shvuah. So he wants to make sure that he's always Chai the Shvuah. V'amarava. Haiman the Nakish the other way around. The Nakish Trey Shtar Bnei Cham Shechad Shavar Mishamne Lichab Barmeil. Again, Loi Mashvinalu. Avin Rabbana Milsa Nichel Mava. V'Nichel Leiva. Nichel Mava Kehechel Loi Nifkim Shtar. Like we just said, the other way around over here. It's for Shtar Pogum, and he's going to be Chai the Shvuah. V'Nichel Leiva Kadesh Lo Yachal Fayroy. Like that, he doesn't have to be careful from the Achbar. Amr Avashi Ayman the Nakish Shtar Barmeil Zuzi V'Amar Shavne Leichad. Bar Chamshin. Even one fidi loy mashvinalu. My time, you know what we say? I'm reading high mifrit pari. Bats and pain and back. Va'amar lehavli shtarai. Va'amar le'erchesli. I lost it because le'tavra. Now, umapik lehai. Va'amar lehai echrinu. Now he's going to pull up with the new star at a different time. Now with the Rashbam that we said earlier, Rashbam says when a person has a tayver, a shayver, a receipt, he's never going to be able to lend him the exact same money with this chap as a good chap. He gave him a receipt for what? For $1,000 by rewriting a new receipt of $500, even though the receipt doesn't have the zman, like we said earlier, which is helpful. In such a case, it's not going to help because your halva is a brand new halva. Brand new. It's a different payment. One was 50, that was 100. Zok the Mishnah. Now we're mentioning this a little interesting that we're going. We spoke this by Richin Daf Yomi Aleph regarding the Eved, Chetzi Eved, of good ayah good, all those type of concepts. However, now we're going to be talking about someone who has a merchutz. Shnei achin. Now they're Yairish, this Beis Abad or this merchutz. Echad ani v'echad ashi. One's very wealthy, one's very poor. V'niach lahen avia and merchutz. Beis Abad, he left them over this, this olive press, etc. Asal nischar, if it's meant to commercial use only, then no problem, it's easy. Aschar lamp, so they split the revenue. Asal la'atzma, however, for personal use, ashar milani. The usher, again, they're not the nicest brothers. He's taking advantage. He says, Kach l'chavadim. He makes fun of him. He says, oh, bring your slaves. What do you want from me? Or Kach l'chazeisim. Ubav aseh bebeis abad. We're showing us this concept in the Mishnah that a person can tell it to his brother who's an ani and say, tough luck, but I'm not willing. You have to know the Rishonim do handle the pice game. If he could go and sell his shares, it doesn't make sense. But he's not allowed to go and open it and charge for people to come and use it, not for personal use. Shnayim shayu be'ir achas. Shem echad yosef ben Shimon, v'shem achar yosef ben Shimon. Ein yichoyin lahaitzi shtar chayv zel zeh. Because again, how can you be mighty shtar chayv with each other? The two yosef ben Shimons. V'loy achar yachal lahaitzi alein shtar chayv. More than that, no one could take it away from them shtar chayv. Like Mr. Rechner said, he's a twin. And he said that the Attorney General of California told him that technically, as long as he's wearing a glove, he could shoot somebody, and the state of California can't put them in prison. Why? Because it's the same type of concept. We're two twins, each one saying it wasn't me. You have to do beyond the reasonable doubt. So in such a case, you can never be able to be mitzi alei and a shtar chayv. Nimtza la'echa taka. You have to know the Gemara is going to question this today's daf. Nimtza la'echa min shtaraisav taka shtar sheyosef ben Shimon. The halacha is peruah shtar sheyosef ben Shimon peruah. The halacha is shtar shneim is peruah. So Kate said, Yasu, what do you do in such a case? Yishalshlu, you go up a third generation. Right? He's short, he's white, he's fat, he's big. Try to do as much distinct features as possible. And if you can't, they're very similar. And the Gemara is going to handle what happens if you don't know if he's not a kohen. How do you do it? It says as follows, an IOU note. I need plenty bar plenty. It doesn't make a difference who the plenty bar plenty is. Now mimcha is who? The person's saying, oh, it's me. I'm the OU. So on Duf Kaf Ayin Beis and Beis Amar Avuna Mimcha. What's you mean? I feel a Mershkalusav. I feel a Meshaver Malka. It could be from the Melech. Doesn't mean you. Where do you see you? So Amalem Chesed Rava Pike Ayin Bei. Go quickly. Look into this. We're going to see Avuna's going to ask you. So Nafak Dak the Ashkak the Tani Taka found the Bryce that says as follows. Get Sheyeshel of Adam Ve'aim Boys Man. Now these are the one of the gets that is possibly not Mamzer. So Abishalayim Im Katsa by Gerashtia Hayoim. Now the Havamina is this is when the Adam is seen and it says Hayoim. So we're thinking this is man. Kosher Alma Hayoim. What's Yoim mean? Ahu Yoim the Navi we Mashma. The day that he pulls out the Beis Din, you wanted to get triggered. Shachanami, we should say the same type of concept. What's Mimcha? Mahu Gafra and the Nafik Metusi Yadi Mashman. Taisus Masbi even a little better. That the concept is a little better. Is that my IOU is whoever is holding on to this IOU, I'm willing to make it that I'm chayiv to you the money. Just like a check. A lot of times people ask you, they owe you money. They start pulling out their wallet and opening up checks with, it's all made out to cash. The same type of concept that I'm willing to give you an IOU. Whoever's going to come to me with my check, I'm willing to pay him. Not necessarily doesn't mean I have to write it to him. Amar Rabbi v'dama b'shol kerbelazis sfira. Da'amar Eidei Mesira Kartzi. There we can understand. There we understand it's about Eidei Mesira. V'l'hacha, why don't you have a simple concept? Leichosh l'nefila. What is the taina? The taina is very nice as IOU, but it's very possible that what? That you picked it up from the street. Amalei l'nefila lechashina. We're not worried about nefila. Uminah temra the lechashina nefila. Where do you see that we're not chayshish for nefila? It's not. Shnaim, we're going to bring a raya from our Mishnah. Shnaim, shayu beracha, Hashem echad Yosef ben Shimon. V'shem acher Yosef ben Shimon. So you have two Yosef ben Shimons. The halacha is, ein yichoyin l'haitzi shtar chayv zel zeh, v'lo acher yichol l'haitzi alein shtar chayv. That's our Mishnah. That you can't pull out a shtar chayv against them. Make a diak. Ha'heim alecherim yichoyim. They could go and write a shtar on other people. Why we not chayshish for nefila, bam kasha, v'eim alechosh nefila, el shalav shmami. No. We're not worried that if a person has an IOU that it's going to fall nefila chashina. Frek tomorrow. V'abaya. What is Rabbi going to do with this Mishnah? The answer is very simple. L'nefila dechal l'chashina. L'nefila deram l'chashina. Which means to say is, what had to happen in our Mishnah? You had to have Yosef ben Shimon, who's holding on to IOU, it had to fall, and who had to be the one to pick it up? The other Yosef ben Shimon. Zaktabai, what's the chances that the Yosef ben Shimon dropped it and the other Yosef ben Shimon picked it up? And we feared us to share yesterday. What's Rabbi going to say? What's the other taina? The other taina kapshuta is that what happens today when you pick up a check and it says very clearly Yanim's name, you go over to him, oh, did you lose your check? He says, sure I did. Right? So you give it back to him. So we're not chayshish that the one who picked it up, maybe it was Yosef ben Shimon, but we're chayshish ended up coming back to his hands, and Yatz Hashem, we're going to pick up with Kuf Ayin Gimel, the top of the daf.